Let me just preface this by saying that I love Pokemon. The message and stories that this franchise tells produces this kind of magic with the Pokemon that I catch. They're my friends, and it's my story I'm creating through each and every game. The bonds and attachments are real, and neither Temtem nor Palworld even get close to making me feel that way. I mean, there's a reason I post this image under every wholesome Pokemon fanart I see. However, like a disappointed parent, I have to heavily discourage anyone from purchasing Pokémon Legends ZA. It's not worth $70, it's not worth the $450 for a Switch 2, it's not worth any bundle it's packaged in. I just finished this game a couple days ago and I feel nothing. Nothing for the visuals, nothing for the gameplay, and nothing for the story. That last one was a lie. The story actually pissed me off the most out of all of this. So much wasted potential, so little progress being made, so many distractions and conveniences. It's just really tiring. And I want you to focus on that word, potential, because this game has a ton of it. Heaps even. I'm gonna go off on this story, which I understand doesn't contribute to criticism equally across all of us, or for anything really, but for me, this was the back that broke the camel's straw. What? It was this story that made me realize something. Something I should have realized a long, long time ago. And I'll tell you right at the end of this video, which is a perfect segue into the story because that's exactly what the story does. And spoilers, duh. Let's start at the start. You arrived in Lumiose on a train, get bothered by Tawny. I'm gonna call her Tawny because that's the variant I got. If you play as a girl, you get Urbane, but they're the same character. Who is trying to use what you say out of context to promote her business, get your bag stolen, fight the guy who stole it after choosing a starter, get trapped in a battle royale in real life, then get saved by a Pokemon that shoots Kamehamehas out of its flower. Afterwards, you meet AZ, get your room knocked the fuck out before Tawny comes back to show you the city in which she totally could have waited until tomorrow, thanks, and reveals her initial motivation. She wants to help AZ and protect Lumiose, and you get strong-armed into joining her group to achieve that. Okay? Simple enough. Next day, you also get strong-armed into entering the real-life battle royale and meet another team member named Lita. She's a cheery girl who came to Lumiose to become a famous dancer. That's 90% of her character, by the way, but we'll get to that. After a bit of tutorial hell, you meet the other team member, Naveen, who reveals later that he ran away to Lumiose after his grandmother disapproved of his passion for fashion designing. So much, in fact, that she basically tossed out all of his investment. Okay, a relatable and solid backstory. Care to guess how much that's fleshed out? He only mentions it once, and it doesn't come up again. To be honest, he has more character when he's simping for a streamer girl. Afterwards, you rank yourself up at the Royale and meet Emma, a girl-made detective from the XY games. She hints that Tawny is looking for someone in Lumiose, and has hired her to look for them, though there are no leads. Next day, you meet a couple of other people that give you tutorials or distract you until you make it to Emma's office. She battles you and introduces you to Mega Evolution. From there, you rank up in the Royale until you encounter your first rogue Mega Evolution Pokemon. You go through the tutorial and beat it and find out you're probably the chosen one because Zygarde has its eyes on you. You get contacted by Vinny, a person working for Quasarco that's looking into these rogue Mega Evolution incidents. And then through corporate favoritism, you skip a whole bunch of ranks all the way to F, which honestly was a good idea because I was dreading having to do 26 promotion matches, which meant 26 nights grinding for tickets at minimum. Vinny will also update you on rogue Mega Evolution Pokemon, and you fight them with your team to ensure they don't cause any damage to the public. And that's what happens until the end of the game. There are 5.5 hours worth of cutscenes between this and the next significant plot point. Everything else in between is shoehorned in to pad out the game's runtime. The main goal is to rise up in the Royale and reach rank A and deal with all the obstacles that come with it. My issue is that we are led on by two questions. What is causing the rogue Mega Evolutions, and who is Tawny looking for? Not a single conversation we have between our first encounter with rogue Mega Evolutions and the climax of the game gets us anywhere closer to understanding or finding out anything about these two questions. By the time you get to the end, AZ just answers everything for you and says, "Hey, remember that death laser I built 3,000 years ago and am super regretful for using? Yeah, I actually built another one, right in the middle of this densely populated city, and that's what's causing all this rogue mega evolution, because it hasn't had maintenance in years." And then he fucking dies! Not a single thing led up to this. Credits roll, and he's dead. This death has absolutely no impact, because he barely interacts with us and goes, "I'm so regretful for the things I did, please help me." That's all he does, the entire game. This kind of characterization bleeds into everyone else. Tawny has the generic goal of wanting to help Lumiose. I would have forgiven this if they expanded on what actually made her a person, by explaining why she was looking for this person we heard from Emma. Nothing about what it means for her, why she is doing it, and what happens when they do find them. Every single time it gets brought up, she waves it off and says, "I'll tell you later." She does this so much to the point that we don't even find out until the post-game that it was her grandmother, who also happened to be the CEO of Quasartico. Aside from it being obvious regardless of whether or not we fleshed it out, the CEO doesn't even have a character herself, being nothing more than a public figurehead for a company that only spouts words to ensure their stocks don't plummet off a cliff. Which is every CEO, now that I think about it. Lita and Naveen don't get much outside of being the goofy one and the straight man. And every person you meet afterward only has one defining personality trait. Oh, he's supportive, he's an idiot, she's a detective, she's an eccentric streamer, she's tired of that other guy being an idiot all the time, he calls his boss, boss. He's shady, she's subdued but violent, and she's rich and annoying. That's all you need to know, and that's all there is to know. The worst part is that most of these encounters don't change anything. The city doesn't change when you mess with those with influence, and they don't have any information that furthers the discovery for either of the questions posed at the beginning of the game. There are only obstacles in the way of you ranking up in the Royale. If I had to write the game in a day, this is how I would do it. I would have to switch a few things around, but we could have it in a way where the streamer girl is like, "Oh, you're looking into the tower? Well, my grandpa is the one doing the work on it. Why don't you ask him?" Then you go to him and he's like, "Well, we were hired by Quasartico to reinforce the structure, but they wouldn't tell us why and gave us too much money to say no, though." And then you go to Quasartico and grill them on it, but they deflect and dodge the questions until you go away, but you task Emma with investigating in your stead. With the leads dead and pressure rising with the rogue mega Pokemon actually attacking more populated areas instead of being in secluded areas the whole game, you suddenly hear that Ivor, of all people, saw some suspicious figures sneaking in and out of the tower. So you head out to learn from him. The sister plot plays out, and once you beat him, he says, "I tried to battle them in the name of justice, but they fled like cowards. One of them dropped his badge, though." And Tawny visibly recognizes that it's a Rust Syndicate badge, but she denies knowing what it is. Then the debt plot is brought up, and Tawny is forced to say, "Oh, I borrowed money from them in order to fund an ad for Hotel Z." The rest of it plays out as normal until Koboral is like, "We know the tower has been emitting strange energy for a while now, and we're certain that Quasartico are the ones keeping secrets about it. But we haven't been able to pry any answers from them either. Lots of grunts who don't even know what's going on. The only way to find out is to capture the right person or come in at another angle." That's when he suggests infiltrating the SBC, but surprise, they had their eyes on you for a while now. You do their stupid tournament, and this annoying ass bitch is like, "Quasartico approached us saying they needed a huge influx of capital for an emergency matter. I said I would if in return they gave me some control of their holotech. Must be having big ambitions for the amount they had to borrow. Big enough to fill your entire hotel 3 times over." So then you pressure Quasartico about it a second time and battle Vinny when he tells you to back off. Jet threatens to call the cops and you're forced to back down. With all fingers pointed towards Quasartico but nothing you can do about it, all you can do is pursue the Royale. When finding Gris, he's like, "We know what's going on at the tower, and what Quasartico was hiding." You do the whole Lysander Labs thing, learn about a device capable of destroying Lumiose made by AZ, and duke it out. Being a formal criminal himself, Gris makes a suggestion. "If you guys care about the safety of Lumiose so much, then you'll have to stop pulling your punches." So you head back to Hotel Z, tell AZ what you learned, but now he's all like, "It's impossible to operate the tower without using Megaflow as the key, so any ill intent they have would be for nothing." But this doesn't satisfy Team MZ, and they take Griss's advice and stop pulling punches. With the Rust Syndicate, they lure Vinny out in a secluded alleyway and jump his ass, while interrogating him near to death, making Team MZ feel unease. AZ comes in and interrupts the whole thing with Light of Ruin and is like, "Stop this immediately. I'm sorry, Vinny. This is my fault. I will take responsibility." Back at the hotel, he tells you that he asked Quasartico in containing the energy emitting from his weapon, causing Rogue Mega Evolution. Everything else can play out like normal until the credits. Do you see how easy that was? I made that up in an hour. Probably would have been faster if I could type the script faster. Why is it that they took so much extra time to make this game, and they couldn't even come up with a plot half as good as the one I'm spitballing? And did you notice I didn't bring up Emma again? Yeah, me neither. I honestly think she could be removed from the game and it will mostly stay the same. Might need to change who gives the tutorials, but that's it. She just doesn't do anything. And I'm not going to spend any more effort trying to utilize her, so just give me some ideas in the comments, please. However, there is a couple of ideas here that I will spend more effort on, specifically the characters for your rank D and B promotion matches. Corbeau and the Griss siblings, I'll call them. These guys have the most potential to create a couple great subplots that I just want my storyteller brain to gush about. I'll start with the Griss siblings since they're easier. I think the idea of having people be chained to the past of Team Flare is a good idea. I just wish it was executed better. Like, instead of dropping that lore when you're looking for them for your promotion battle, have the scars show themselves throughout the whole game. Like, what if we run into him talking with a kid, but then the parent strolls up and yanks him away, saying to stay away from them, giving them the stink eye as well. Have the Griss siblings' anger flare up more often and scare away customers, maybe even have Lita look into it and find out there's an internet group that stalks them and warns people not to associate with any business they run, finding out that they're part of Team Flare that way. And then when the city goes to shit, we could have the Griss siblings save the guy's kid and he thanks them, which will solidify Griss's drive to release himself from the chains of his past and let his actions in the present define him. I think this is a really nice story to have in parallel with the main one and should have more screen time. The second one with Corbeau actually got me heated, and I started ranting to my Discord friends about it. You know, other than the fact that this story is saying that loan sharks are the good guys in a game marketed to children. A review of Lord Frogmire actually does a better job at condemning this than I would, because I'm just too low-key to be angry about much of anything. And he does a better job at explaining the gripes I have with the gameplay than I will, so go watch his video after this one. So let me set the stage for you. You wake up one day and now you're in debt to the mob. What? Legitimately, this plotline comes out of nowhere except for one suspicious call that gets little attention the day before. Other than the Yakuza setting up shop so brazenly in the middle of Paris, there are three problems I have with Corbeau's storyline. One, again, the plotline just comes out of nowhere. Two, his bad guy is actually good guy working around the law shtick is really rushed, and he really shouldn't even be characterized this way. And three, Tawny is let off way too easy for this fuck up. We can mitigate two of these problems at once. You can have you witness a robbery in progress by the Rust Syndicate. As shop owner asks you to handle them, you battle two while another gets away with a box. You return to the shop owner with what you were able to get back, but he notices that you didn't grab the important one and angrily shoos you out of the store. Later, we can have Tawny say that she's a bit behind on a payment of hers or needs to get some groceries and asks us to give her some money. Then we oblige, however, every time it comes up, the amount she wants gets bigger and more unreasonable. You get suspicious until she says she has a secret project she's working on that will help all of Team MZ. Then when Corbeau comes knocking for the latest payment, everyone is oblivious. What? Tawny owes money to the mob? They make their plea and take on the interest debt. Now, it was this very cutscene that I got heated on. In the vanilla story, Tawny just waltzes in while everyone is worried for her, and she explains that, "Oops, Teehee, I borrowed $100,000 with a 1,000% interest rate. So sorry." And I'm like, bro, do you understand the gravity of what you just did? Naveen said near the end of the game that he likes to keep people accountable. So why didn't he make Tawny accountable when they were forced to take on her debt? I imagine that it would go something like this. You're sorry. We're all in debt to the mob and you're sorry? Naveen, no! Clearly she doesn't understand what she did to all of us. My passion for pursuing fashion might as well be gone. Lita has no chance of becoming a famous dancer anymore, and player name here won't be able to protect Lumiose like you wanted. Naveen, that's enough. And you think that it just affects us? Once they squeeze every last drop out of us, they'll come for our families next. My grandma, Lita's brother, and even AZ. No one will be able to live their normal lives again. Naveen, stop, please. And do you want to know what's most insulting about this? You went to the mob first before asking any one of us for help. And you lied to us to keep us from knowing. I thought we were friends, Tawny. That's what Team MZ was supposed to be. If that's not it, then what are we? I'm done. Naveen, where are you going? Anywhere but here. I quit. Naveen leaves the team while you comfort Tawny, crying silently in the corner. Going forward, I had this idea that the team slowly splinters apart as the story progresses, and Tawny tries more and more desperately to keep the team together. Like, we could have Lita leave once she finds out that everything going on was AZ's fault. We could even have her opposed to Jumping Vinny. But Tawny gets you to do it behind her back. Once she finds out, she leaves the team. The only hard part is that there isn't another conflict of interest to utilize in order to get you, the player, to leave. Then again, we don't really need you to leave, or we can do it this way. What if both you and Lita are against Jumping Vinny, but Tawny goes behind both of your backs, even going as far to steal Pokemon or innocently request one from us in order to make it seem like she wasn't involved? Then once AZ tells the truth, he also reveals what Tawny had done to get it out of him, then you and Lita leave at the same time. Honestly, the only reason I want you to leave is because I want to have a heartbreaking battle in the rain outside of Hotel Z, where Tawny is trying to force you to stay, and once you beat her, she cries on your chest begging you to stay. But you still walk away, leaving her all alone. Then once the city goes to shit, you find an exhausted Tawny who had been trying to quell the rogue Mega Evolutions all by herself. Then we have the usual re-team up of the MZ members, and then end it all with a great big group hug. I kind of forgot about Corpo, didn't I? Basically, the first thing I would change is that when he's making us do his odd jobs, make them seem a bit more gray morally. Maybe have you break into the sewers to clean up the mess in there, and then have us give them the Mega Shards for a mysterious purpose. Then we could head back to that angry shopkeeper store, and we're tasked with breaking stuff to create a distraction. The shopkeeper battles us outside while the grunt goes in and discovers that he's been importing exotic Pokemon, which would never have been found out by the police to keep it PG. Importing these exotic Pokemon could create an invasive species crisis, and the shopkeeper is arrested once an anonymous tip is sent to the police. The Squatter one can happen as normal, and I would remove the protest one because it would conflict with my new timeline with all the suspicion on Clay's article. And finally, I would never have Corbeau be depicted as a hardened softie. Maybe we could have a point where he's cornered by the SBC and you and Tawny save him, so now he owes you both a favor, or else he would look bad in front of his grunts as someone who doesn't pay off his debts. So this would be the motivation for lending his goons to help Tawny with Jumping Vinny. Then in the climax, there could be a mutual respect between you and the Syndicate where you choose not to be enemies because you all would be more useful to each other alive rather than dead. I also want to talk about fleshing out the team's motivations. I found it disappointing that these characters are not much more than NPCs to help us fight Mega Pokemon. And they were provided with good motivations, but they were only mentioned once or twice and then never brought up again. The way I would enhance this is to start with the side quests. Oh my god, these side quests are awful, and there are more than 100 of them. They amount to nothing more than fetch quests, tutorials, battles, or any combination of the three. You can easily nix 40 of these to make room for some special side quests that are Team MZ exclusive. 10 each for Tawny, Lita, Naveen, and AZ. So basically the Persona social link system. I'll just add one to this counter real quick. And by doing this, you can learn more about the person Tawny is looking for, the struggle for Lita as she follows her passion, Naveen's reluctance to patch things up with his family, and have AZ be this wise grandpa who provides insight about making mistakes and how to live with or fix them. Perhaps even imply some behind-the-scenes reasons for why the protag is here in the first place. The thing I've been leading up to is that this game has a lot of ties with the act of making mistakes. and AZ, being the penultimate example of mistakes, only solidifies this. So that's what I would make the new theme of this story. Mistakes. Making them, living with them, forgiving them, fearing them, seeing the consequences of them. They are all what makes us human, and it is how we respond to the ones we or others have made or are making that determines who we are. Mistakes are a part of life, and it is up to you to decide how that affects you. That is how I would write this story in a day, admittedly using hindsight as a crutch. And one other teensy tiny little thing, I think the final boss sucked. I commend them for making a unique final boss that isn't against a trainer and instead against a monster flower. But the way they did it had us fighting its little minions on the ground to create a distraction while Zygarde did all the work, only popping up to do the equivalent of a QTE but remove the QT, which makes the final sequence boring because Zygarde's Mega Evolution is locked behind a cutscene and we don't get to play with it until post-game, which diminishes the impact. I also question why Zygarde or Floette, I forgot who specifically, needed us to be the strongest Mega Evolution trainer, just so that we can Mega Evolve it and press a button. In both cases, you could get any schmuck to do that. Seriously, what was the point? Ultimately, the most infuriating thing about all of this is that this story had potential. But instead, we were left with this first draft-ass version of the story where our relationship with the team doesn't grow and isn't challenged and nothing ever moves the plot forward, only sideways. And I decided that I wasn't going to play the post-game to find out the answers to these questions. And seeing how the game handled the rest of the story, I figured, why bother? And definitively called it quits once I entered post-game. I'm going to keep the next two sections short as I don't have as strong feelings about them. I know everyone's been talking about the flat textures on the buildings, and they are correct in pointing it out. These buildings look boring and nowhere near something like Kamurocho from the Yakuza series. And that city is significantly smaller than this one. Add another point to that tally. I found very few places or landmarks that looked identifiable or stood out with the rest of the city. I'd just like to see some more special areas that nobody might know about unless you go off exploring or if someone takes you there. I'm just not impressed, much less even intrigued by this city. Player models and Pokemon look fine, some of the Megas look dope as hell and some look stupid as hell, as is any Pokemon. The thing is that I'm not the biggest fan of this new art direction they took since Scarlet and Violet. Everything just has this pasty in-between realistic and anime textured skin and hair. I don't really know how to explain it, but that's all I have to say anyway. Let's face it, this category is what essentially makes or breaks this game for you, because there is literally nothing else to like this game for. Initially, I was interested for the most part on how they changed up the formula, but after about 10 hours in, a lot of smaller problems started compounding, until I realized it was all part of the same issue. I do not like the fact that you can't get your Pokemon to act without being locked onto an opponent, which makes it really hard to gain some distance in order to set up without taking damage in return. I would change this to have like a constant lock on with like the L3 button and have us hold L2 for commands only. I only know the PlayStation inputs, okay? Also, you better hope that you're fighting on even ground, because if you're on a building that is higher than your opponent, massive jank ensues. Next, every person you battle fights the same way, as in they typically rush straight at you and spam all their moves, with a rare setup or protect mixed in, which actually invalidates a lot of other strategies you yourself could pull off, so ultimately you end up doing the same thing. The best strat I found is to go all melee and use all moves that make you jump high or dig under the ground so you're untouchable. Time this right and also use Mega Evolution for iframes if you're in a pinch and you'll never lose. Another thing that enables the strategy is that your Pokemon only moves by following you, which makes things awkward. Special or ranged attackers are pretty weak because of this, so ranged moves are balanced in a way where they take a little bit longer to launch than melee moves. Seems fair in practice since you could be sniping from the other side of the arena, right? Actually no, using a ranged attack is a positioning nightmare. Let's say we have your opponent here, your Pokemon here, and you tell your Pokemon to do a ranged attack from here. The command doesn't go to your Pokemon, it actually goes to a spot to the top right of your position. So your Pokemon is forced to walk to this position before shooting, where it will get intercepted by an attack. Then while it's charging this ranged attack, you get hit again and die. Why can't you shoot it from its initial position? Neither physical or setup moves do this, by the way. Ultimately, all of this criticism here culminates into one thing. Your control over Pokemon is tied too much to where your position is rather than the Pokemon's position. There are two ways I would address this. First one is to have a secondary menu for simple movement commands like holding L2 and R2 at the same time, like for ultimate attacks for Xenoverse 2. Just have follow me, get back, stay, and pursue for your XYBA buttons. The second, and the one I prefer, is that I would rather just remove the player from the equation entirely. I think the player dodging and weaving during wild battles made sense in Legends Arceus, but I think it's vestigial in this game because it's tied to the Legend series. In other words, I don't think we need it. If the Pokemon are already sophisticated-ish enough to follow you, what's stopping us from just having full control of the Pokemon ourselves? We already have a Synchro Machine in SV, and we can already auto-battle with it. Just give the trainer controls to the Pokemon and let us move around as them, that way we have full control of their positioning. It's because of these things and generally not wanting to go on competitive Pokemon that I don't even want to touch the multiplayer. In what world did they think locking Megastones behind it was a good idea? The only good thing is that I didn't want to use any of them, so I didn't miss out on much. All of these little problems compound and drag down the gameplay to a point where I just think it's meh. But I certainly do see the potential in it though, but it certainly needs a lot of work. In its current state, I would just rather go back to RPG battles. I wanted to like this game. I really did. I was born and raised as a Pokemon fan in Gen 6. Pokemon Y was my first Pokemon game ever. And I was okay with the games not being good, as I felt like that wasn't what made Gen 6 great. It was the anime and the Pokemon. I thought the Legend series wouldn't fail. I thought because they were taking extra time, it wouldn't fail. But it did, in most aspects. And in the end, I was so taken out of it that I didn't even feel an attachment to my Pokemon. The one thing I look for in any Pokemon game, because you can only watch your Pokemon while hanging out with them and can't interact with them in any way. If you want to feel the soul of this franchise again, it's unfortunate that I have to say you will not find it here. The soul is in us, the community surrounding this franchise. It's in the fan art creators, the animators, the storytellers, the competitive players, and the streamers. And that made me realize something. My love for Pokemon, my love for my Pokemon, never came from the games. It always came from imagination, from the adventures I would curate in my head. Our wholesome moments, our struggles, and our friendships only ever existed in my head. That's why I created a huge 500,000 word fanfiction about this franchise. Less because I wanted to, but more because I was frustrated with the Pokemon Company that we couldn't get these more serious and compelling stories out of them. Now, whether or not that fanfiction is good is a matter of perspective, really. But the point is that there's a magic here, tainted as it might be, that got me to act and create a more ideal version of Pokemon for myself. And I'm sure it's affected a lot more people than me. Although in the end, still like a disappointed parent, I gotta see it through to the end. I, of my own volition, will still be purchasing these games, DLC and all, up until the official Gen 10 games come out. Just so we can end it off on a flat, even number. And if that still disappoints me, I will most likely drop the Pokemon games. Not the whole franchise, that's impossible, but I'll never buy another game from them again. I suspect this game will end up like Sonic Frontiers because I'm seeing a pretty split 40-60 on this, except I'm gonna be on the pessimistic side this time. This game had a lot of potential, and unlike Sonic Frontiers, none of it was executed well. Never, ever pay $70 for this game, much less get a Switch 2 for it. It is a mediocre and shallow game in story, gameplay, and exploration, which makes me certain that anyone who's able to see past the rose-tinted glasses can determine the disappointment for themselves. I rate Pokemon Legends ZA a 4 out of 10.